All of this has resurrected the proposals for Sky Shield, which is the plan for NATO countries to defend forward, to be able to intercept these air threats from Russia before they cross the border into NATO rather than after, which is what Poland has been forced to do. Now, that's a long-standing plan for European countries to extend air protection over Western Ukraine, using their own fighter assets, using their own air defense assets, and not, crucially, dependent on the United States.
The new Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, is heading to Kyiv today to announce over £140 million of British aid for Ukraine. It comes as Russia and Belarus began military exercises on NATO's eastern flanks just days after Russian drones, some of which came from Belarus, violated NATO airspace in Poland. Joining me now is Keir Giles. He's a senior consulting fellow at Chatham House's Russia and Eurasia programme. Keir, thanks for joining us. Tell us what these military exercises are about. I even read in my paper that they involve a simulated nuclear attack.
Well, these are regular exercises. They happen once every couple of years, and everybody gets quite excited each time they happen because Russia does have a pattern of using exercises as cover for doing something unpleasant. It's never been publicly confirmed that actually there was a simulated nuclear attack at the end of one of these exercises. That's entered the public domain as the result of some misguided headline writing by one newspaper over 2 decades ago that has spun into an accepted fact about the exercise. But there's no doubt that people are on edge, especially Russia and Belarus's neighbors, because these are relatively large military maneuvers, and countries like Poland and Latvia are preparing by themselves, getting ready to counter whatever may come from Russia. This, of course, is particularly after Tuesday night's errant drones going into Polish airspace and demonstrating just how vulnerable countries like Poland on the front line are to the kind of attack that Ukraine sees night after night.
Keir, thank you for clearing up. I'm glad I raised that point about the nuclear simulation because it helped you have the opportunity to clear it up. Can you now also give me some clear guidance on these drones that went into Poland? And you used, interestingly enough, the word errant. Some people would say they weren't errant, but it was a deliberate provocation. What is your assessment of what happened?
We don't actually have enough information to be certain about that, although there's been a lot of certainty expressed. Poland and even Germany are saying very clearly that this was a deliberate act. The United States, and not just Donald Trump, who we shouldn't necessarily pay too much attention to on this issue, but the Supreme Allied Commander Europe has said actually it's not that clear. The problem is that Russia's denials, such as they are, simply saying we didn't plan to attack Poland, are a lot less implausible here than they are in some other things where Russia is clearly to blame. And so it is a grey area. But all of that is really a distraction because NATO and Europe need to respond to this as though it were a deliberate act. It doesn't matter whether it was recklessness or carelessness or actually a deliberate provocation. In order to make sure it doesn't happen again, there need to be countermeasures that will make Russia sit up and take notice.
Oh, well, you've opened up a whole new line of questioning now, Keir. What countermeasures will make Russia sit up and take notice without starting World War III?
All of this has resurrected the proposals for Sky Shield, which is the plan for NATO countries to defend forward, to be able to intercept these air threats from Russia before they cross the border into NATO rather than after, which is what Poland has been forced to do. Now, that's a long-standing plan for European countries to extend air protection over Western Ukraine, using their own fighter assets, using their own air defense assets, and not, crucially, dependent on the United States. Now, that has been shot down, if you'll pardon the pun, before now on the grounds that it could trigger an accidental confrontation with Russia, which is a little ridiculous since the whole point of it is actually to protect people against Russia. But again, we have these conversations coming up now, separate from these discussions about the so-called coalition of the willing, about how exactly European NATO can better protect itself against this kind of threat.
And in effect, what you're saying is that Poland really should go on a war footing. I mean, one of these drones managed to penetrate 140 kilometres, presumably because the Poles weren't really contemplating the idea that a Russian drone would enter their airspace. They will now contemplate this and they will intercept anything like that much more quickly.
I'm sure they have been contemplating it. We shouldn't necessarily read into the fact that a drone wasn't intercepted, that there was incapacity by Poland to do it. There will have been conscious choices to which of these to intercept and which not. But it has shown up that Poland doesn't have the kind of integrated air and missile defense system that Ukraine has found essential for survival. It didn't have the layered defenses in order to intercept these drones using tools other than vastly expensive air-to-air missiles. And let's not forget, Poland is a frontline state. They've been spending years already pouring funds into their own military rearmament and regrowing the armed forces to be ready for the Russian threat. How much worse prepared are countries that are west of Warsaw?
Oh, well, there you go. Interestingly, Keir Giles, somebody from my village WhatsApp group in South Oxfordshire has just texted to say, did anyone see the B-52 just fly over the village? It must be on its way to Brize Norton. Maybe World War III is already underway. Keir Giles, Senior Consulting Fellow at Chatham House's Russia and Eurasia programme. Thank you so much for coming on the show and giving us a really fascinating insight into what is going on in terms of Russian incursion into Poland.
Let's speak to Jaroslav Wałęsa, who is Polish MP in Donald Tusk's party. Morning to you, Jaroslav.
Good morning.
What, first of all, would you say is the response from the Polish public? How have people digested what happened with those Russian drones coming into Polish airspace? And I guess, crucially, what response do people want?
Well, to be honest, there are mixed bags of feelings. On one hand, obviously, there's a growing concern that these incursions are becoming more widely spread on a big part of Poland. But on the other hand, shooting down some of these drones was actually welcomed by a general public, that we're actually doing something. Because we have to understand that this incursion was just another step of what has been happening over Poland in the past couple of years. We had these incursions before in the past, but right now, we have to analyze it on a different sphere of influence. On the one hand, we do have this military exercises in Belarus, and it's called Zapad, right? And it means West. So basically, they're training how to attack the NATO country. So we shouldn't be surprised that this is a part of this exercise. But what is troubling is the fact that one of these drones landed no more than 100 kilometers from Gdynia. And Gdynia is a very important seaport where a lot of NATO equipment is being shipped to. So this is very alarming. But on the other hand, it should be a learning experience. It should be something that we have to analyze from what can be done to prevent this in the future. And I'm just a politician, so I'm not going to tell a military what to do. I'm expecting them to provide us with options. What can we do in the future to prevent this from happening?
Do you think that the response from NATO has been adequate? I mean, Oliver Moody told us there that only 4 out of those 20 drones that went into Polish airspace were actually brought down, and that was by very expensive fighter jets rather than missiles to take them out. Do you think NATO's approach is right, and do you feel there is enough protection for Poland at the moment?
Well, obviously, there's a lot of we have to consider and take care of. But you also have to understand that shooting down these drones also can put civilian population in danger. So sometimes, many times, it's better just to let these drones land peacefully at some secluded area instead of them exploding over a populated area. So we have to consider that as well. We're not in a war, so the procedures are different. But that being said, I'm very grateful that our closest allies, European allies, stepped up. We have a declaration from President Macron. He's going to send additional fighter jets to Poland. We have declarations from Germany and other allies from Europe. The troubling is what has been said by Donald Trump. But on the other hand, I'm not surprised, because he told us many times that European has to take care of its own security. So this is just him showing his understanding of what can be accomplished within the NATO. I would expect him to do more because we still, in Europe, we still need more time to step up, beef up our military and air force, and it's going to take at least additional couple of years before we can do it on our own. And this is the most troubling part in the whole thing, because it seems that Donald Trump doesn't understand that we want to defend ourselves, but we do need more time to do it. And his responses are not something that I'm welcoming, especially since he's trying to play it down, saying that maybe it was a mistake, maybe it wasn't something that they were planning to do. No. If it happened in the past on individual basis, individual drones landing or flying over Polish airspace, that may have been a mistake. But if 19 of those drones fly into Poland, then it's a deliberate act of hostile intentions, and we have to say it outright.
Jaroslav, thank you so much for joining us this morning. That is Jaroslav Wałęsa, who is a member of the Polish Parliament. He is in Donald Tusk, of course, the Prime Minister's Civic Platform Party.